Hey everybody, it's your boy, and today's video is going to be about the great non-debate of our time. What is gender? What is sex? In particular, what is a woman? And by extension, what is a man? And how it's a complete waste of time to even discuss this issue and debate this issue with feminists, both intersectional and TERFs, because ultimately, at least in regards to the intersectionals, all of this is one big distraction so that all the other left-wing activists behind the scenes at universities, in the government, civil service, etc., all across the West, can do what they've always been doing for decades, and that is pushing for their own agendas to create the communist utopia that they've been trying to implement for the best part of 100 years. First off, let's make this clear. All this started because of the TERFs deconstructing what masculinity is, to the point that this actually influenced society to change how they brought up boys and turn them into men. To the point that now, as the right and even some people on the left have noticed, we have a situation in the West where there are hardly any good fathers in certain areas of society, in particular, say, the black community in America, and we also have a litany of broken, mentally ill men who don't know what it's like to be an actual man because they were brought up in an increasingly feminized society where doing anything remotely masculine at school, in the workplace, they're demonized day in, day out. And if they happen to have attention difficulties or anything like that, they're put on drugs and sedated. And then, in America at least, they wonder why there's a lot of mass shootings going on and they're pretty much all men. All of that was created by second-wave feminists who are now known as TERFs for the most part, and that was all because they wanted to work out what men were, what masculinity was, and how they could control and manipulate it because they were communists and they believed that they could change human nature, they could warp and mould people into whatever they wanted because they believed that we're all just blank slates, it's all just social constructs. And lo and behold, look what happens when you meddle with nature, when you meddle with what men are actually like, and they wonder why they have all these issues, they wonder where all the good men have gone, and they wonder why we have a crisis of masculinity. When you actually do the things that people are claiming that intersectionals are doing to femininity, yeah, you end up with this. However, the crisis of masculinity seems to have magically disappeared from the right. Once again, we ignore men's issues because women are most affected. How are women most affected? Because transgender people use bathrooms. People are transitioning. Oh, these leftists can't tell us what a woman is. This pales in comparison to what has actually been done to men, because unlike with women who didn't have to deal with any of these things, they didn't have to be brought up against their own nature. They were only encouraged to do certain acts later on in life when they were adults, to go out and have careers, to delay having children. But all of this stuff, they had the choice. They didn't have to do it. They could have just ignored the feminists telling them to do all these things. And by and large, femininity was not actually harmed by it. Women weren't really harmed by it overall. Maybe society could have done with more kids and women having more happier lives, but other than that, compared to the rampant mental illness, broken homes, and broken people that deconstructing masculinity and destroying it has wreaked upon the West, women have largely gotten away with it. Until recently, because, trans people now have suddenly become this massive issue and have created a massive philosophical problem. I don't know why, I don't know how, but apparently trans women are the most dangerous thing to happen to regular biological women since the patriarchy, apparently. Or they are the patriarchy if you believe the TERFs. Now, first off, I don't really know what trans women do that necessarily ruins femininity, how it even necessarily deconstructs it. There are intersectional women that are trying to deconstruct what femininity is and trying to redefine it, but really, that's not happened yet, as far as I'm seeing. But really, that's not happening right now. Maybe it will happen in a couple of decades' time if they have their way, but they're receiving a massive backlash, whereas before, when it happened to men, nobody cared. What I am seeing is an attempt to really see trans women as just women, as if they were always women, they always will be women, just because they used to be a man, at least socially, before they transitioned, that doesn't mean that they're not women. They're just women. Look, now they've decided they're a woman, and because they're a woman, that now comes with all the other stuff associated with women, except for childbirth and things like that. From the TERF angle, all I hear is, oh, it's a manipulative, dangerous conspiracy by the patriarchy to infiltrate the sisterhood and to warp and destroy it, which is ironic considering that these people are literally subversives themselves and have outright committed terrorism in the name of feminism for the past several decades, and have infiltrated universities, the education system as a whole, government, in order to do what they want to do. It's all projection, and let's be honest, the intersectionals learnt that also from them. They're all doing it to each other and by and large to the rest of society. The thing is, it's not even a question. We already know what it is. We already know what is a man and what masculinity is. Biologically, a woman is, of course, as the TERFs love to use as this stupid slogan, an adult human female. You don't even need a biology course to determine what a woman is. So when leftists stammer about what is a woman, the reason why they do that is because if they use a biological scientific explanation as to what a woman is, that contradicts the whole idea that gender or sex is a social construct. What they're trying to say is that there is a social aspect to being a woman, a social definition that is constructed, and that anything could fall into that. That is what they're claiming. That's why they say trans women are women, because when they declare socially, because it's always a social declaration when this happens, when people come out as trans, they're declaring themselves that socially they are now women or men, but nobody seems to be talking about trans men, which is another reason why you should see this as a great non-debate, because apparently trans men don't matter. Trans men aren't apparently an issue to men, but trans women are to women, yet they're both the same. Are trans men not a threat to what masculinity is, to what men are, to what men have always been? All this is being used so the right wing have some pet issue that they can talk about for God knows how long the left want them to, so they can carry on with the real stuff that's important and distract the right wing so the right wing aren't looking in that direction. That way the left in education, for example, can sneak in things like CRT and other things like that into schools and the university system, and likewise in the civil service engage in what they've been doing for decades, the long march through the institutions, unimpeded. If it weren't for the pandemic and parents weren't seeing on these Zoom calls what their kids were learning, then all of this would have been unknown to most people on the right, because they would have been too busy arguing about Caitlyn Jenner and non-binary people on all sorts of stuff. In fact, in the more esoteric areas of the right, even they're having this discussion about what is sex from a traditional point of view, even though the traditionalist point of view is that there's a man and a woman, and that's that. As much as this issue may be having some impact on the real world, it's nowhere near as bad as the crisis of masculinity. So those of us on the right, what we should do really is stop debating this issue. It's not really a debate worth having. It was settled the moment we came out of the primordial ooze. None of this is relevant. The social definition of a man or a woman is to some extent linked to biology anyway, and it's something that differs from culture to culture. You're never going to agree on what the role of a man or a woman should be, because if we all agreed on it, the world would be one big homogeneous mass, and it isn't. The real problem is in our institutions, in our education system, and the attitude that we approach regards to boys and girls. As Nick Recater has said recently, very eloquently, we teach boys to respect the dignity of women, but we don't teach girls to respect the dignity of boys and men. We just don't. And that is a real problem that we must address. Those are real issues. The subversion of our culture and values, and our own problems in how we rear our own children. Stop getting bogged down in meaningless debates like this. I've been saying this for years. Other people have been saying this for years. Let the TERFs and intersectionals fight amongst themselves. Let them get bogged down in it, because that only helps us. If we get bogged down in it, then the left can use that as a distraction and just quietly continue what they've been doing for decades. Do we really want that to continue? No, we don't. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.